And it says recording.
Okay. You know, a dream is like a river, ever changing as it flows. And a dreamer's just a vessel that must follow where it goes. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. I am Maxwell Ivy, also known around the world as The Blind Blogger, and you can find me at theblindblogger.net, where you can also purchase a copy of my latest book, The Blind Blogger's New York City Adventures, How You Can Make Your Dreams Come True. Looking forward to hearing more about that from y'all. Like I say, theblindblogger.net. Well, today here at What's Your Excuse, I'm going to be talking with a good friend of mine, Suzie Carr, who is I think by now is an 11-time Amazon bestseller for fiction. And in her bio, it says 10, but I know she's got a new book out called The Dance that we're going to talk about. So I would be shocked if it isn't 11 or more. Very successful author. She's also one of these people who understands that the best parts of life are those unexpected curves, and that we need to embrace them, live through them, learn from them, and become a better person from them. So I'm looking forward to hearing about how some of the curves that have hit her in her life, how she handled them, and whatever lessons she might have for you. So you can find her at curveswelcome.com. Welcome to What's Your Excuse?
Thank you, Max. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here with you. We've wanted to do this for a while, and I'm so happy that we're finally here together and meeting face to face like this, well, camera to camera, and hearing your voice. It just brings a whole new level to the working relationship that we have here, and it's wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Well, I am glad that we did finally make it happen. I'm also glad to see that you are finally healthy again, and that you were able to find out the reason why you were having so much trouble with your physical health. And it's hard to believe it was something as simple as mold in a coffee machine or something, wasn't it?
It sure was. Oh my gosh, Max. Last year at this time, I was so sick. I was sick for 3 months. I had to take almost that much time out of work, on and off, and the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I had a terrible upper respiratory issue, and I had flu-like symptoms. I had a fever of 102 for 3 months straight, and I was frustrated. I was so frustrated. And then my doctor finally said, I think that there has to be a mold issue. And I looked everywhere in my house. I said, I don't see any mold issues. I don't have any water issues. I don't know how this could happen. And then one day I was at work, and I was sick again. And I said, I have to go home. And it was a Friday. And this was 3 months in. And I thought, I can't live like this. There is something in my house making me sick. And I'm going to go home. And I don't care. I'm not going to sleep at all tonight. I am going to go through every square inch of my house and figure it out. And I do believe in divine intervention. And I believe that I was guided, because as soon as I walked in my house, I said, I'm going to start with my kitchen. And I looked at my coffee pot and I said, okay, I'm going to start with my coffee pot. I'm going to clean everything in this kitchen top to bottom. And Max, it may sound a little disgusting, but I'm doing this as a public service announcement. I opened up the place in the coffee pot where you put the water, and I took a paper towel and I started wiping inside of it. And I'll be damned if I didn't scoop up black mold.
Yeah, that stuff is deadly. I mean,
and as soon as I saw that, I knew that was my problem, because I drink a lot of coffee, and I put my water in overnight. I set up my coffee overnight so it will brew the next morning. And yeah, so my water that was making the coffee was sitting in black mold all night long. And then I was drinking that.
I think I might be sick.
Well, again, I know that's a little disgusting, but I think it's really important that people understand that coffee pots are very dangerous if you don't keep them clean. And you know what, it sounds like it should be very intuitive. Okay, wherever there's water, there might be mold. However, I consider myself a fairly intelligent person, and for some reason, it never dawned on me to I had an old coffee maker and it didn't have one of those nifty clean cycles on it or a reminder that I should clean it. I just thought, I'm pouring water in here. What could the harm be?
Yeah.
However, it really, anybody listening to this who doesn't know this, you should be cleaning your coffee pot once a month, pouring 4 cups of white vinegar, the rest water, and brewing that and rinsing it with clean water, going through a clean cycle water 2 more times, and do that once a month. And then you won't have that problem that I had. Max, I'm not kidding when I say 2 days after I threw the coffee pot out. 2 days after, I was perfectly fine. I was perfectly healthy. All my problems went away.
Now, I've heard about problems with mold with humidifiers, and I use a CPAP machine. So I've been warned about that with my CPAP machine because it has a humidifier as part of the device. But would have never thought about coffee because, I mean, doesn't coffee get to like 90 or 100 degrees or more when it's going
Right.
to, you would think it would kill all that stuff. But the other thing, I guess, is, my mom learned from her mom, going back to the days when you put the thing on the stove and had the water poured down through it while it was being heated on one of the burners on your stove. In their family, they have always run vinegar through their machines, whatever kind of machine it was, at least once a month. So
Absolutely.
it's just one of those things that for some reason wasn't passed down to you and wasn't something that would be naturally obvious, because I bet you were even using bottled water in your coffee machine.
Filtered water.
Filtered water. And you're thinking filtered water. So there can't be much left in it that could go like that on it. So yeah, it's just one of those many things that we don't really think about. I mean, just look at how, I bet this wasn't the second or third or even 5th time you were looking through your house trying to find the cause before the coffee pot dawned on you.
Well, absolutely. I was looking for big issues. Okay.
Yeah.
Is anything in the basement leaking? Or is my roof leaking, even though I have a brand new roof for a few years? Is anything leaking? And I couldn't find anything that was leaking. And I even thought maybe it's where I work, because we do have issues with leaking in my building.
Right.
And so I attributed it to that. And well, they had an inspector come out just to make sure, and they assured me that it wasn't my work environment either. So yeah, I'm just glad it's solved, and I never want to go through that again, and I hope nobody has to go through that, because it's such a silly thing to be sick over.
Yeah, well, why don't we make the natural transition here? What were some of the things you did or that you told yourself in order to keep from letting this long-term sickness get the best of you? Because I imagine that had to be really hard on you mentally, just not knowing what it was and having to put up with it day after day for months.
Well, Max, I'm a person who is really big into personal development, and I am also into alternative healthcare. And when I tell you, I tried everything in terms of trying to be well. Okay, so that includes things like meditation, things like just listening to self-guided healing meditations, drinking turmeric, black pepper, and ginger every morning. Making sure at that point that I got 8 hours of sleep. I just went into a really serious health regimen, and I've continued that. So here's my thing. There's always a silver lining, and there's always a lesson to be learned. And I believe that out of the curves in life, if we should go there right now, the curves in life, they always offer a lesson and a benefit if you're looking for them. And so obstacles are always going to be there. Health-wise, that was the biggest obstacle I faced in terms of I had no energy. I had a fever. I was a busy person working full-time, plus running a business, running a podcast, interacting with my readers. It was a really difficult time for me, but I went into the spiritual aspect, and I think that was a great opportunity for me to get spiritually well. And that's what came out of it. And I still, a year later, or I should say maybe, 9 months later, I am still practicing all of those regimens. And I believe that they are making me a very healthy person and keeping me healthy. And I avoid black mold.
Well, I think it is an often overlooked thing, especially with people like us, people who are creative, who are working online, and you feel like your business has to has to take precedent over your health, but it takes a lot of time and investment and experiences like what you went through to get to that point where you realize that your health, your physical and mental and spiritual health is actually an asset in your business. Would you agree with that?
1,000,000%. Max, I'm big on having priorities, and I have only three in life. And if something doesn't fall under those three priorities in my life, they are not going to be put on my table. And the first priority I'm going to say is family, because that is my first priority. Second is health. And then third comes personal and professional development. And so health is right up there. So I am really super, super focused on my health, because this is the only body that I'm ever going to have. And if I don't take care of it, I'm not going to have a place to live in. And I need to be really healthy and really energetic and really focused, mentally clear in order to do what I do, because I'm a very busy person. I have a lot of ambition and a lot of goals. And in order to achieve those, I have to be in peak shape, in both mentally and physically.
All right. Now, you mentioned that you have a podcast, and I think I read something on Facebook today about you recording your first new episode in a while. So why don't you tell me a little bit about the podcast and a little bit about your first episode back?
Okay. Well, Max, I have two podcasts now. The first one I've had for about 1.5 years, and it's called Curves Welcome. And that is under the Lesbian Talk Show. It's an umbrella of several podcasts, and mine is one of them. And so I'll talk about that one first. That is one where it's a personal development. And I talk about self-empowerment, ways to be healthy, ways to live your best life, how to focus, how to set goals, anything that can help improve and hopefully offer a little insight and inspiration from things that I learned along the way, from role models that I watch and learn from lessons I've learned from other people. So I share those kinds of insights. I learn it and then I share it. And those are usually 10 to 15 minutes in length. And I publish that every other week on a Thursday. So that is a pride and joy. I absolutely love doing that podcast. It's one that I do on my own. It's solo. It's just me talking with my listeners. I don't have guests on that one. So that brings me to my other podcast that just launched yesterday. And that one is called The Curvy Life. And this one's a little different. The format of this one is I have guests that I interview, and I bring them on, just as we're doing here. And I talk with them about one of the biggest curves that they've faced in life, what they learned from it, what the gift was that they learned from it, how it changed them, and how it empowered them. Because I believe, and what I hope this show and the podcast will show, is that we are not defined by the obstacles, challenges, or curveballs, if you will, that life tosses at us. We are defined by how we react to those, because we're all given obstacles, we're all given challenges, some much harder than others, absolutely. But it's still all in the way that we react to them and how we perceive them and the lens that we view them through that allow us to grow as people and to inspire others. And so the guests that I have on this podcast are people who have been through something, have a lesson to learn and share with other people. And so my first guest was my sister Tammy White. And the reason she was the first person that I thought of when I wanted to do this podcast. And I thought she's going to be the perfect guest, because she's somebody who is super courageous and has been through something really hard that a lot of people have been through, that I know people will be able to relate to her story, and actually really find some answers for themselves through what she has to say. And she had breast cancer 7 years ago at 37 years old. And she had a 10-year-old son and a 17-year-old daughter at the time. And she was married 1 month. She had just gotten married a month before, and she was hit with this. And she had to have a double mastectomy and reconstructive surgery. And that was the bad part, okay? But what came out of that was she turned into somebody, she said, different. And by that, she's a beautiful person to begin with, but she's even more beautiful now. If that's even possible, she is, because she inspires other people who are going through that, or even people who have a loved one who is going through an illness or a challenge. It doesn't even have to be breast cancer, it's a challenge. She's an inspiration to them. And through what she said on my podcast, she really does offer some great info and help in helping people like myself, who was a supporter. I was her support, and I didn't know what to say to her. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to act. And she goes into that, which I think is super helpful, because a lot of people do not know what to do or say when somebody really close to them says, I have cancer, or somebody died, or it's really hard. How do you know what to say or what to feel or what they need? And so her lessons really, I think that people are going to get a lot from listening to that podcast. And so I'm lining up. I'm going to be doing that once a month. I'm going to have special guests on there once a month, and I am taking requests. I'm looking for guests for that, so people can find that on my website.
I'll send you an email when we're through. I've got a few names for you.
Awesome.
Before I forget, why don't you drop the name of the website or where they can find the podcast? Because it sounds like something that everybody could benefit from and something I need to subscribe to myself. Wonderful.
Well, I think the easiest way to get there is, so you can find both of my podcasts, is go to curveswelcome.com/podcast.
All right. Well, that's
and
much
from
simpler.
there, you'll be able to get links to both of those podcast channels.
All right. Well, that is good to know. Very good to know. Now, I don't want to forget to talk about your writing. You are a very talented, successful fiction author.
Thank you.
I was just wondering. Well, I'm not saying anything that isn't true. I don't lie on this show. Actually, I don't lie anywhere. Occasionally, I might fib to somebody that doesn't want me to do something, but I'm not going to.
Little white lie here and there. Well, never hurt anybody.
Well, my dad used to have an expression, and it may not be the best way of looking at life, but this may be the one of the few things he ever said that people could probably find a little fault with. He would say, "Sometimes you can't persuade somebody; it's just easier to fib to them."
I like it.
And so, more than once he would follow that advice himself. But but like I said, I wouldn't say anything that wasn't true. And I have read a good chunk of your latest book, or it was your latest book when we first started talking about this, The Dance. Why don't you tell people what you consider your style is? What are some of the subjects you write about, and maybe a little bit about your latest book?
Sure. Okay, so I've written and published 11 novels, and I have one coming out next month, so that will make 12. My novels are, they're considered lesbian fiction, although I would argue and say they are mainstream, because the focus of my books are on the triumphs of women, of the characters, the lead characters, who happen to be, they are lesbians, and the focus of each story, though, is a kind of like a journey, a characterization, and so it is very character driven. I like to tackle subjects where I can learn something and then I can share that with people. So there is a little bit of a personal development aspect to most of my stories. And so, I'm going to go through more of my later, my later ones, my previous ones, not so much the earliest ones, because those are romance books, and they're primarily romance books. But the ones that I've done, like Beneath Everything, The Dance, Sandcastles, and my latest one, The Curvy Side of Life. Those are the ones that they do have a romance twist to them, but the primary focus of them is personal development. So The Dance. I was watching a TED Talk video, and I was watching, the subject was the demise of the honeybees and how they're dying out, and how if we don't do something about this, we're going to be in some serious trouble as a planet, because we need the honeybees. We need the bees to pollinate, to be able to have the variety of food that we have. They are one of those keystone species that without them, everything's going to change. And there's a real problem with their populations. And there's a lot of reasons behind that. But there are things that we can do as individuals to be able to help them. And when I heard this, I thought, oh my God, I need to write a book about this, because I want to learn more about this, and I want to be able to share that with people. Because if we can do something about this, we need to do something. So I ended up meeting a local beekeeper and his wife. They live about 5 miles from my home, and they have this beautiful bee apiary, and they welcomed me into it. And they have about 50 hives, which is a lot. That equates to a lot of bees. And I wanted to get a hands-on feel. I had never been around that many bees before. And so they suited me up, and they let me go in and help them with their pollen trays. And they were showing me around the hives. And Max, there's nothing like standing there and being surrounded by tens of thousands of honeybees. It was the most surreal experience of my life. It was amazing. There was an energy that I can't even describe. It felt like I was lifted off the ground. It sounds so weird, but there's an energy, a buzz. They are dancing. They are working together collaboratively like no other species. I mean, it's crazy. We can learn so much from them. And I walked away that day completely excited and with my story. I knew what I was going to write about. So it was a story that has a lot of real life drama to it. It has to deal with infidelity and death and parenthood and things of that sort. And of course, honeybees. And so it's a tale, I'll call it a tale, that has romance and life lessons and some really cool insights on what we can do to help the honeybees. So that one's called The Dance, and that came out in 2016. Yeah, so that's probably, I would say, that's one of my favorite books, and mainly because I learned a lot of lessons. There's something very personal that happened to me while I was writing that book. My dog, Sunshine, who, man, I love that dog. He was 9 and he died. He died of cancer. And it was, honestly, Max, that was the hardest thing I've ever been through in my life. And I know some people might listen to that and think, it's a dog. Well, he was my son. He was the son I was never able to conceive. And he was my baby. And I loved that dog. I'm trying not to get emotional every time I talk about him.
Well, it's
3
fine.
years later, and I'm still emotional over him. I loved him, and a piece of my heart was taken out of me when he died. And for about 3 months, I cried I bawled, and I didn't even cry. I bawled for 3 months straight. I went through a super depression, and I felt like I am never going to be able to get out of this. And then I said, I've got to start writing. I have to start writing. And so I went to visit the bees, and that experience changed me. However, I still went back and I still struggled with writing this story. And I know this may sound weird to some people, but I feel like my sunshine was there with me. One day I was walking, and I feel like he whispered into my ear, Mom, you are not helping my legacy here by dying because I died. And that was the central theme, the core lesson that my character learned in this book, is that because somebody died does not mean you should die, because that does nothing to honor their life or their legacy. And from that moment on, Max, I stopped bawling my eyes out. I stopped crying, and I started smiling and thinking of all the good memories I had of him, and I started living again. And I get chills every time I think about that, because that was such a pivotal moment in my life. And it's such a necessary moment of grieving and healing from grief. And I hope that I portrayed that in the book. I feel like I may have, from some of the feedback I got from readers, that it really helped them deal with living after death.
Well, I wish I had gone back to your book when I was dealing with the loss of our dog, Miss Penny, or excuse me, my dog, because the dog from the time we got her thought that I was her human, and the rest of the family didn't really matter unless they had food or cheese or wanted to go somewhere and were going to take her with them. So she died in March. She was poisoned in water. She got into some antifreeze due to water runoff. We live out in kind of unincorporated country. Somebody changed the antifreeze in their truck, poured the old stuff on the ground. We had a rainstorm. Yeah, it was very, very bad. And my nephew ended up pretty much having to carry her to the vet, and he ended up paying for her to be euthanized and then for her to be cremated. And the people who we took her to, they did a really nice job of it as far as trying to make things go smoothly. And it turns out that their son or nephew is a woodcraft person, and he made us one of the most beautiful little boxes you'll ever see for Penny's ashes.
So
but
sweet.
the thing, I hate to make you cry too, because I'm sure that anytime somebody tells a dog story, it's going to make you think of Sunshine. But she went.
Feeling.
Yeah, well, we lost Penny in March, and it wasn't until May or June when I finally decided to sit down and write a blog post about it and put that out on the internet, some of my memories of Penny. And after that, I was able to actually start getting some work done. And the other thing I did was I included her in the dedication to my latest book. So because I used to refer to Penny as my mindfulness coach, and honestly feel like a lot of my story might not have happened or been told as quickly if I didn't have Penny to remind me of stuff, the important stuff.
Yeah. Dogs are so special like that. They do remind you of the special things in life. They remind you to stop, smell the roses, to live in balance, don't they? I mean, living in balance, and nobody's going to teach that better than a dog, because they really are all about balance: rest, sleep, eat, repeat.
Yeah. And they don't do anything they don't want to do unless they're physically, you have to physically want to move it. If you've never tried to bathe a dog that doesn't want a bath, you don't know about willpower, because for the most part, dogs and cats and even horses to some extent, they don't do things that they don't want to do.
Right.
They don't think about should and should not and what am I supposed to be thinking or doing. They just, if I feel like laying on my back and barking at the clouds, I'm going to lay on my back and bark at the cloud.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's that's why I called her my mindfulness coach. I used to, and it was a great conversation starter with people, because when you start very occasionally you run into somebody who just doesn't get the whole idea of pets having impacts on our lives, and they don't get it. But yeah, I miss that crazy dog, that Mud who used to go, okay, it's time to put the laptop down and do your real job of scratching that place I can't reach by myself.
Yes. Well, my dog Bumblebee is still with us, and they were siblings. They were from the same litter. And so she's going to be 12 in February, and she still acts like she's 2. And she needs to go for an hour-long walk every day still, sometimes 2. And she reminds me to stop working, like step away from the phone and the computer and go for a walk with me, or sit with me, or pay attention to me.
Yep.
Yeah. They do help you to live presently.
Yeah, they're great that way. And we would have another dog. Our problem is we do not have a fence, and we're worried, what if we get attached to another dog and have the same kind of thing happen? So we need a fence, and then we can get another dog. We've got quite a large yard, so the fence is a bigger problem than it sounds like. But we almost rescued a dog last week during the cold snap, but my My nephew just isn't ready to have a dog. We found that out the other day that he still isn't ready to have a dog. So now it's good that you mentioned that that dogs will help keep you balanced, because before we started this, you were saying that you had an experience with losing your focus or losing your center and balance, and that it'd be good for you to share some of that with people, to give them to remind them of the dangers of that, and maybe help them get out of it if they're stuck in that kind of a spiral.
Yeah, I think that, especially at the beginning of a new year, right? That's like when most of us tend to go, like, put down goals like a mile long and like kill ourselves in that first month to make a dent. At least that has been my experience in life. I still do. I have this dry erase board that the last week of every year, I analyze what I did in the last year, take a picture of it, make a note, have that for safekeeping, start a new one for the new year. And this list used to be like 30 items deep. I wanted to accomplish everything because I felt like if I didn't accomplish these things, I was standing still and I was never going to get anywhere in life. And oh my God. So just to sort of preface this, I should say now that list is down to about 8 items, much more realistic.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get there because, again, it took me a while to get there. And the reason why I got there down to 8 from 30 items is because there was one year I ended up not sick like from the black mold sick, but really unbalanced. And it starts to affect everything. It starts to affect your mental health, your clarity, your well-being, your personality, because your mood gets disrupted. It starts to affect your physical health, which it did. I ended up having some health issues, not the black mold ones, but still a cancer scare, which thankfully it turned out not to be cancer. But that was my big awakening. Was one year I ended up, again, I was waking up at 2 a.m. and going to bed at 7 p.m. and working continuously the entire day, and trying to tackle all of these projects that I had going on and trying to do it all and maintain a household, cook, get clean, all that stuff that comes with it. Walk my dogs. At the time I had both dogs. And then one day I ended up finding a lump on my neck. And that just took me back, and I thought, whoa. So I went, had it checked out, and sure enough, they were like, this looks like it could be something pretty scary. They didn't use those words, but in my mind, that's what I heard.
They didn't have to use those words.
This looks like something that could be scary. And in my mind, it was really scary. And so I had to go and had to have it removed and biopsied and all of that stuff. And, you have to wait a week to find the results. And it was pretty scary. And it turned out to be benign. It turned out to be a tumor, but it was a benign tumor. I was very, very lucky because, I went into that surgery thinking, I caused this. All the stress that I put on myself, this is what happens. I ended up making myself ill because I was so unbalanced. I took it to the extreme. And right after that, I stopped all of that. And I thought, I have to be much more realistic and balanced if I want to be able to maintain my vitality, my life, my health, my energy, all of that. And if I want to produce good work, not just a bunch of work, but good focused work. If I want to put love into my work, I need to tone it down a little bit and really figure out what my priorities are. And so I did that. And, instead of writing 2 books a year, I write 1 book a year. And that killed me to do that at first. But my books are much better now, I think, because I'm taking my time. I'm researching them. I'm enjoying the process. And I think when you go at something unbalanced and too much, you put everything else suffers. You're not giving your best. You're not putting the best version of your work or your love or yourself out there. And so now I do. I I put the brake on when I feel like I've got too much going on. I do have a lot going on, Max, and a lot of people will say, how do you do it all? Well, here's how I do it all. I don't do it all today. I break it up into small, digestible steps. And I can achieve a goal, even if it takes me 2 years to achieve it. If I take small steps, I'll achieve it eventually. And you know what? I'll enjoy the process of it because I'm taking my time and I'm indulging my senses as I'm going along and producing a podcast, talking to somebody inspiring, writing a book, working out, walking my dog. I get to do it all, but I do it in small steps. And knowing my priorities, that's the key. That's the key. Family comes first, and family is my dog and my spouse and my parents, my siblings, and I include friends in that category too, my close friends, which, you know what, I don't have a ton of friends. I have a lot of acquaintances, but I have friends that are like sisters to me, and they know who they are, and I can count them on one hand. So I don't spread myself too thin. I just don't do it. I pace myself, and I've learned to pace myself. And that, gosh, I hope if anyone's listening and they take anything away from this conversation, it is to pace yourself. Be present, take some deep breaths. If you're feeling overwhelmed, stop, indulge in something, and go back to it. Small steps are just as powerful. It took me a long time to learn that.
Well, one of the things I think makes it more difficult on authors is you have some of these people out there, like a James Patterson, like a Mary Higgins Clark, and I think even to some extent with Janet Ivanovich. You have these people who are releasing not only 2 books a year, sometimes it seems like they're 3 or 4 books a year coming from these people. And yeah, they may be shorter, they may be 150 or 200 words or 200 instead of the 600, 700, 800 word monsters we got used to in the 90s. But they just give this impression to people that there's nothing to writing multiple books in a year, or there's nothing to being on stage speaking 60 or 70 or 100 days out of the year. They make it seem like what they're doing is so easy that the rest of us should be ashamed if we're not doing it too.
Oh my gosh, you just hit the nail on the head. That is such a perfect way to describe from one artist to another, because when you're a creative, that is so much pressure. We put so much pressure on ourselves unnecessarily by comparing ourselves, the way we do things, to what other people are doing. And I think it's natural to do that. I think we all do that. I've done it, and I still kind of do it sometimes, and I have to stop myself because it's so easy to do. I look at my fellow writers and I'm like, oh my gosh, she is releasing 4 books this year and I'm only doing 1, but I'm like, but hey, hang on. Well, so what else am I doing? Well, I'm the director of membership for the Golden Crown Literary Society. I work full-time at a job that I love at a university doing digital storytelling. You know, I'm a dog mom to a dog that just, you know, I'm her world and she's my world. I'm a great spouse. I have a great family, and I have time for them, and I take care of my nutrition and my physical fitness. So yes, I might not be doing 4 books a year, but I'm doing all these other things. So to compare my life to that, to say somebody who is doing 4 books a year, that's not comparing apples to apples. We have totally different choices and lives and priorities. And so it's unfair. It's an unfair comparison. And when we make unfair comparisons, nothing good can come from that. We can't measure it accurately. So if anybody out there is comparing themselves to what other people are doing and using that as a measurement of their success, well, you're always going to fail. You're always going to fall short of success if you do that. You have to set your own standards, right? You have to set your own standards and say, what are my priorities? Where do they fall within these standards? And as long as I'm catching that mark, well, I'm doing pretty good. And as long as I'm happy and I'm healthy and I have a smile on my face, well, I'm doing pretty good. So yeah, it's dangerous to make those comparisons. And it's interesting because I just did a podcast on that's going to be releasing on Thursday about making comparisons and the dangers of it. because we all do it. I've done it so many times, and I still do it, and I stop myself and I say, wait a minute, this is not apples to apples. Maybe they don't work full time as well. I mean, there are only so many hours in a day, right?
And the other thing is we have no way of knowing what their staff is like, because a lot of people who have staff don't generally let the public see their staff or brag about their staff. We also don't know what kind of life they're willing to accept. That person who wrote 4 books last year may be chain smoking, drinking, sleeping
Right.
3 hours a day, shortening their life by years because of the dangers of lack of sleep and quality rest. And so they may be mortgaging their future so they can be prolific for this 1 year or 2 years.
I completely agree. And, there's a point I want to make to that. I listen to a lot of self-help motivational videos in the morning. I don't watch television. I watch YouTube, and I watch inspiring people who are role models to me. But I have to say, there is some garbage out there, and I call it garbage because I think it's dangerous. Some of the messages that they put out there, some of these motivational speakers, they talk about, you got to grind it. You got to do it. You got to get up. You got to miss your sleep. If you want to be successful, forget sleep. You got to work through the night. And I think that's so wrong, Max, because I know people currently, and have seen people ruin their health by doing that, by sacrificing sleep for work. And nothing good comes from that in the long term. You cannot be a healthy, focused, best version of yourself person if you're not sleeping. Sleep is like, gosh, it should be everybody's top priority in their health category, because without proper sleep, your brain is not going to have a chance to regenerate itself and focus properly. And I really cringe when I hear people who are role models out there to a lot of people say, you don't need to sleep. If you want to be successful, you got to work through the night. No, no, you don't.
Yeah, and not that I want to take this into the area of politics, because I try to stay out of that area as much as possible. But, based on what both of us know about sleep and lack of sleep, it's not a surprise that our president, who claims to not sleep more than a few hours a night, is the way he is. And that's all I'll say on that.
Yep.
But I have sleep apnea. I was finally diagnosed with it in 2010 or 11. And it was a pretty severe case when it was first diagnosed, because I was also 250 or 300 pounds overweight at that time. So I had double effects: the genetic cause plus the weight. And when they start telling you the negative side effects of sleep apnea, all the way up to increased risk for heart attack, stroke, and death while you're sleeping, you start to realize that sleep is really important. But and here's the one that makes no sense to me, because you would think that when any man hears this one, that they would automatically go get a sleep study just to make sure.
Right.
Lack of sleep can cause impotence and a lack of interest in sex or other things that you used to find enjoyable. I mean, how can you hear that and not go, yeah, a sleep study isn't a bad idea?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it affects all parts of your health, parts of it. So I tune out when people start saying, I don't need to sleep. Yeah, you do.
Yeah, and you not only need to sleep.
I would never follow that advice or ever advocate to put your health below your professional life, your professional endeavors. Yeah.
So what, not that you aren't busy enough already, but I always get asked this question: what are your plans for the future, for the next year or so? Do you have anything coming?
Oh yeah. So I am starting my next novel, and that one, I'm just in the brainstorming stages, enjoying that process right now, just coming up with a story. And in addition to that, I am also, working on my podcast, both of my podcasts and my blog, and, just fine tuning my digital storytelling, and so videography and photography skills and things like that. So really just, honing in on some new skills, playing a little piano. I just bought a new piano. And so just dabbling in that a little bit and working for, like I said, I was just elected as the as a director of membership. Sorry, I'm kind of tripping over my own words here. Director of membership for the Golden Crown Literary Society. So really excited about that and love to be involved in that. So it's been a lot of fun.
Well, I hate to admit this, but I don't know who the heck they are. So can you tell me who they are and what they do?
Oh, yeah. So they are a wonderful organization, nonprofit organization, who they are, dedicated. The mission is dedication to, education and awareness and promotion of quality lesbian literature. So we have an annual conference once a year. We have a Writers Academy, so people can join the Writers Academy and have mentors help them through the drafts of their manuscript and learning all about writing. There's a lot of networking opportunities and things of that sort. So it's a really great opportunity for writers within that genre to really connect, and it's a beautiful, inclusive environment. Welcoming environment. So it's wonderful. It's great to be a part of it.
Right. Well, I find that most any community for writers and other creative type people online or in person or both is usually supportive. I tell people all the time, if they knew how friendly and supportive the vlogosphere was, that just about everybody would have a blog or a podcast or both. Because we do like to help all the new folk and even learn from the new people, because occasionally that does happen.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing that just kind of I heard in the corner of my ear is this: you are now involved in a course or something on digital storytelling at a university. And to me, that sounds like a big step forward for a university. What is that about?
Well, it's not a course. That's actually my position. I'm a staff member of a university. And so I am the digital storyteller. So also content curation, but the large part of my job is to talk with students, alumni, and faculty and bring to life their experiences of the chosen profession, industry, their experiences as a student, and things like that. So I do that through video. So I interview them and then I capture a bunch of video, they call it B-roll, which is really video shots of them in action. And I create a story out of it. And they're usually like 2 to 4 minutes in length and they have music playing in the background, and they're meant to incite some emotion and action. The goal of them is always to hopefully, touch prospective students of our graduate programs.
Well,
it's a really fun thing.
Right. Well, I find that a lot of universities are still behind the curve when it comes to introducing especially their fine arts students to the whole world of telling their story either through video or audio or blogging. And so I always like to take note when I hear that there is a place that's actually encouraging their students and working with them on these projects that's going to kind of get their feet wet towards this realization that if they're going to be successful as an author or in some other creative fashion, they're going to have to get themselves out there and build that platform and establish their name in front of people. And the best way to do that, as we were talking about before this started, is to connect face-to-face or voice-to-voice doing the YouTube videos, television, or radio shows and podcasts. So I'm just glad to see y'all doing that. That's really impressive.
Yeah. And, on that note, it's not easy for a lot of people. They're shy, they're introverted. It's really uncomfortable to get in front of a camera, isn't it? I mean, or to get on, or to talk, like to have a conversation. If you're not used to being interviewed or interviewing somebody, it can be really challenging and uncomfortable. I remember when I first started doing these interviews, I think maybe 5 years ago. I really can't remember the year exactly, but it's when I developed my brand, Curves Welcome. And I was so nervous. I would, for an hour before, I would be biting my nails and my stomach would be in knots. And it was just I was so rehearsed and I could write everything down and it was terrible. But, you have to get uncomfortable to be able to grow and move forward. And the more you do it, the less, I don't want to say pain, but the more comfortable you become.
Right. Well, that is one of the lessons that you do learn, whether it's whether it's publishing or blogging or doing interviews, is that for the most part, the fear and the discomfort never goes away. You just get better at dealing with it.
Yes, that's a really, you're absolutely right, because there's always that unnerving moment where you feel like you're going to mess up or you're going to say something you can't take back and it's out there forever. So, yeah.
Yeah, which reminds me of a question I've been asked, and I want to ask this to you now. It just occurred to me. You've written 11 books. Your 12th will be out shortly. Um, do you still get nervous when you send that book off to the publisher or to the editor or both?
Yes, as a matter of fact, The Curvy Side of Life, that's going to be out next month, I'm getting back from my editor today, and I am really nervous. I hope that it comes back and like, she doesn't say, this is terrible. Like, don't even think about publishing it. I do have beta readers, a team of 5 that read it first and give me their feedback in terms of, in terms of, do they like the story? What do they think works or doesn't work? So I've really, by the time my editor gets it, I feel really comfortable with it by that point. So
Right.
I'm actually more nervous to send it to my beta readers, because it's usually in a very raw state, and I pray they're kind, and they, at the same time, I don't want them to be too kind where they're not telling me the truth. So yeah, it's a vulnerability feeling, and you just have to deal with it. So yes, it's, of course, every writer, you put your heart and soul into something, and a year in my case, and I hope that people like it. For me, it's more unnerving when you actually hit that publish button and you see it on Amazon and you see people are reading it, and you're praying that these reviews and people are going to be kind and not rip it apart. And, you just never know, because reading is so subjective. It's an art, and the written word is an art, I should say. And so it's very subjective, and some people like it, some people don't. And I'm sure that you understand this, Max, as a writer yourself, that you never get used to being rejected by people in negative reviews. But I think over the years, you learn to cope with it a little better and not take it so personally. It's a hard thing because, again, like, not everybody is going to fall in love with your writing. And some people are going to be like, this is not what I like. And whenever you put your work out there in the public forum, you're going to get criticized. So that's the hardest part. But that being said, I feel like the more books I publish, each one gets a little easier, because I know that I have put the very best of myself into the work. I will never hit publish on a book that I don't feel strongly is worthy of hitting publish on a book. So I have to really love this book in order to hit publish. And it's the only time I will rework it and rework it and rework it, and, write 30 drafts if I have to before I hit that publish button. And that's just something that I do. And so if somebody doesn't like it, I know it's not a reflection of the work I put out there. I put the very best of myself out there. So I hope the other writers feel that way about their work too.
Well, now you have me wondering if I'm actually a writer yet, because I've released 3 books, but I have yet to get a negative review.
Well,
I've yet to have a troll or a stalker or a hater. And now let me make this perfectly clear. I honestly believe that thoughts and words have power. So I want I want God and the universe to know I'm not asking for a troll, stalker, or hater. I don't want one. But I do have days where I think, Max, are you maybe, not putting out everything, or maybe what are you doing differently that, you've never gotten a bad review? Because I haven't. I've had people who have suggested, I've had beta readers who have told me that maybe I held back a little, but as far as the actual books that I've released, I've never gotten a bad review, and a couple of people who aren't authors and who don't really have much experience with authors have asked me, Max, maybe it's a bad thing that you've never gotten less than 5 stars on Amazon. You said, I'm like, I'm like, thanks for putting the thought in my head. That doesn't help any.
Well, so Max, your books though are nonfiction, right? For the
Yes.
most part.
Yes.
And I think that right there is the big difference, because I have some nonfiction books out there that have 5 stars, and I don't think they received any terrible reviews either. I think fiction is its own category, and people either love it or hate it. And
Yeah.
they love the character or they hate the character. As with nonfiction, especially like a memoir or the book that you just released, which is awesome, by the way. I'm 50% through it right now. Loved it. I absolutely love it. I'm taking my time with it because I'm enjoying it.
Did I send
very
you the book
inspiring.
or
You did. You sent
Okay.
You sent it to me.
See, I hate to admit this. I hope I'm not the only one who does this, but there are certain times when I get so involved in what I'm doing, I can't remember what I did yesterday. So
I've just learned to take really good notes.
is that how you do it?
Spreadsheets.
Well, yeah, spreadsheets. I hate spreadsheets. They don't work well with speech.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's probably true, right?
Yeah.
Word document.
Yeah.
A Word
Word
document.
document. Well, that's how I keep my calendar. Well, look, I've really enjoyed talking with you. I appreciate your help with my quandary over not having any negative press. That really helps. That helps one.
Well, you're an inspiring person, especially when in your writing. So to me, that's no surprise that you haven't gotten a negative review, because how can you review somebody negatively when they're giving you their soul like that? Your story. So yeah, I
love that. I'm going to write that down when we're through. Last question, and it's the last question I get a lot of the time. What is there one idea or concept or quote that you can leave people with that will help them if they are struggling with their health or with some issue of balance in their life, since that seems to be the core of what we've talked about mostly today?
Okay, I would say the concept, not necessarily a quote, but a concept that helps me. When feeling overwhelmed, stop, take 5 really deep, thoughtful breaths, and find one really big thing that you are super grateful for in your life, and say thank you 5 times for that. Genuinely meaning thank you, and you'll feel better. I promise.
Okay, that was another great interview. I really enjoyed the time that I spent with Suzie. She is a really amazing woman who had a lot to share with us. And obviously, if we're going to talk about one thing that she talked about more than anything else, it would be about balance, about maintaining good physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health, and that there are no personal or professional goals that can be achieved if you're willing to, or if you are sacrificing your good health in order to try to accomplish them. And I think that's a very important message to get out there, because I too don't think that I would have gotten where I am now if I hadn't addressed some of my own health issues. And I agree with her. There are lots of rock stars out there who are telling people that they can have whatever they want, but they don't need sleep. They don't need good diet. They don't need regular exercise, and that they don't need to continue to read or educate themselves. All they really need to do is to work hard and have passion. So the fact that those are a big miss, maybe even lies, is a good message to get, especially from somebody that's as successful as she is. She is a multiple-time best-selling author on Amazon, and I have no doubt that at some point in the future, one or more of her books are going to be made into movies or be the basis of a television show. She creates these very richly described and developed characters that you almost feel like you've met somewhere after getting to know them through the pages of her books. So I appreciate her coming on the show and sharing the idea about balance and center and taking care of your good health in order to be successful. And I want to thank y'all for continuing to support me by watching or listening to these episodes. As I say all the time, if Suzie can do it, if I can do it, then what's your excuse? I do appreciate that you have lots of demands on your time. You don't have a lot of free time, and it's a real blessing when you spend a few minutes with me. So until next time, oh, wait a minute, I got to plug the book again. The Blind Blogger's New York City Adventure, How You Can Make Your Dreams Come True, www.theblindblogger.net. You can use the contact form if you want to purchase an autographed copy. And just like it says on the website, for every signed copy, I'm also going to send you an ebook so that you have both and can read either or both depending on your circumstances. So until next time, thank you. God bless you and take care out there. And there's bound to be rough waters, and I know I'll take some falls. But with the good Lord as my captain, I can make it through them all. I will sail my vessel until the river runs dry. Like a bird upon the wind, these waters are my sky. I'll never reach my destination if I never try. So I will sail my vessel until the river runs dry. Until the river runs dry.